Europe has just made a decision that shocked every major defense analyst in Washington. For the first time in history, the European Union has opened the doors of its most strategic defense program, SAFE, the Security Action for Europe initiative, to a country outside the continent. And that country is Canada, not the United States. This move instantly reshapes the balance of military influence across the Western world. Canada now gains access to contracts, intelligence cooperation, and industrial partnerships worth tens of billions of dollars, while America, the traditional security powerhouse, is left standing outside the room. Why did Europe bypass the US? Why choose Canada at this exact moment? And what does this mean for the future of NATO, global defense supply chains, and American leadership? Tonight, we break down the decision that could redefine Western security for the next decade. The European Union confirmed that Canada will officially join SAFE, a massive defense industry program designed to rebuild Europe's military production capacity and reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. Canada becomes the first non-EU country ever allowed into this initiative, a milestone that signals deeper strategic trust between Europe and Ottawa. Through SAFE, Canadian companies will be eligible to bid on major European defense contracts, participate in joint development of advanced technologies, and integrate into Europe's secure supply chain for weapons, sensors, cyber platforms, and battlefield systems. But the most striking part of the announcement was what wasn't said. The United States, despite being Europe's largest military ally, was not invited. Washington's absence is intentional, analysts say, and reflects a shift in Europe's long-term strategy to diversify partnerships and avoid over-reliance on American industry. SAFE isn't a symbolic gesture, it is a financial and industrial powerhouse. Over the next decade, Europe plans to invest over $100 billion into rebuilding its defense base, from drone systems and radar networks to artillery, armored vehicles, and next-generation cyber defense tools. By joining SAFE, Canada gains privileged access to this market, positioning itself to secure contracts that could transform its aerospace, cybersecurity, and military tech sectors. This is a huge win for Canada, but an equally significant loss for the United States. For decades, American companies dominated NATO procurement and enjoyed priority access to European defense budgets. Now, a slice of that lucrative market is being opened to a new competitor, Canada. The economic impact is massive. The geopolitical impact is even bigger. This single decision could shift where Europe sources its weapons, technology, and strategic partnerships for years to come. Europe's decision to bypass the United States was not accidental. It was strategic. For years, EU leaders have expressed frustration with their heavy dependence on American military industries, especially after repeated delays in US weapons deliveries and shifting foreign policy priorities in Washington. As the US pivots more aggressively toward the Indo-Pacific, many European governments feel they can no longer rely on America's full attention. At the same time, political polarization in Washington has made long-term defense cooperation unpredictable. Europe wanted a partner who is stable, aligned, and non-dominating, and Canada fits that profile perfectly. Choosing Canada allows Europe to diversify its partnerships without empowering a rival superpower. For Canada, this is one of the biggest diplomatic and industrial victories in decades. By joining SAFE, Canadian companies gain direct access to Europe's rapidly expanding defense market, an ecosystem projected to exceed $100 billion over the next 10 years. This means new contracts in aerospace, surveillance systems, cybersecurity, drone technology, and advanced battlefield communications. It also elevates Canada's political influence inside NATO, positioning Ottawa as a trusted bridge between North America and Europe. On the economic front, the influx of large-scale manufacturing and R&D partnerships could strengthen Canada's tech sector and create thousands of high-skilled jobs. Most importantly, Canada is now treated not just as a military ally, but as a strategic industrial partner, something the country has sought for years. As the official statement puts it, with this agreement, Canada will become the only country outside of Europe with preferential access. That single sentence says everything. Canada is not just included, it is elevated. For the United States, this development represents a rare but significant loss of influence. American defense contractors have long dominated Europe's procurement pipelines, benefiting from guaranteed demand and deep political ties. But with Canada entering SAFE and the United States notably excluded, Europe is signaling that it wants alternatives to American weapons, technology, and industrial leadership. This could divert billions of dollars in future contracts away from U.S. firms, weakening Washington's leverage over NATO's military decisions. It also threatens America's role as Europe's primary security provider, a position that has given the U.S. immense diplomatic power for decades. Perhaps most concerning for Washington, Europe's move suggests an emerging trend, a future where alliances diversify away from U.S. influence, reducing America's central position in the Western defense architecture. Europe's trust in Canada is the result of consistency, stability, and reputation.
Canada has long been viewed as a reliable NATO partner, diplomatically calm, strategically predictable, and free from the sharp political swings that often disrupt Washington's policies. Canadian forces have served alongside European troops in nearly every major NATO mission, earning a reputation for professionalism and cooperation. Canada's defense industry is advanced, but not overbearing, making it a partner rather than a competitor. Most importantly, Europe sees Canada as a nation aligned with Western values, but without the geopolitical baggage of a superpower. For the EU, Canada offers something rare: influence without intimidation, commitment without dominance. In recent years, Canada has quietly diversified its strategic partnerships, a shift that is becoming more visible with the SAFE decision. Ottawa has strengthened ties with Germany on energy transition, expanded semiconductor cooperation with the Netherlands, pursued Indo-Pacific trade agreements, and now entered Europe's defense ecosystem. While the US remains Canada's closest ally, this pattern suggests a deliberate move toward a more independent foreign policy. Canada wants to avoid being seen as solely dependent on Washington, especially as American politics becomes increasingly unpredictable. By engaging Europe directly, Canada gains more leverage, more markets, and more diplomatic space. It is not a break from the US, but it is clearly a rebalancing. Europe's decision to choose Canada over the United States sends ripples across the global security landscape. NATO's procurement chains may shift, with more components and technologies sourced from Canada rather than American suppliers. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia, also seeking diversified partnerships, may view Canada as a model for modern defense cooperation. Meanwhile, the US faces a challenge to its long-standing dominance, forcing Washington to reassess how it engages allies. For Europe, this marks the beginning of a multipolar defense framework, one that spreads influence across several partners instead of a single superpower. In short, Canada's entry into SAFE doesn't just reshape transatlantic defense, it reshapes the future of Western power. What makes this story even more remarkable is that Europe's invitation to Canada might not be a one-off gesture, but the start of a much deeper strategic shift. Officials in Brussels have hinted that Canada could also participate in future joint development programs, from drone swarms to satellite-based surveillance, and even Europe's next-generation air defense architecture. If these discussions move forward, Canada could become a permanent pillar of Europe's military-industrial base, something no non-European country has ever achieved. And here's the twist. Insiders say several EU states specifically pushed for Canada because they wanted a partner who could counterbalance US influence without threatening Europe's autonomy. In other words, this partnership doesn't just elevate Canada, it rewrites the geometry of Western alliances. Europe didn't just choose a new defense partner, it chose a new direction. By bringing Canada into SAFE and leaving the United States outside the circle, the EU signaled a dramatic realignment in how the West manages power, industry, and security. Canada gains access to billions in contracts, a stronger voice in NATO, and a new role as a trusted transatlantic bridge. The United States, for once, finds itself watching from the sidelines, forced to confront the reality that its influence is no longer guaranteed. This moment may be remembered as the point where Canada stepped onto the global stage, not as a quiet participant, but as the decisive, indispensable partner in shaping the future of Western defense. What do you think this shift means for the balance of power within NATO? Is Canada rising toward a new role, or is Europe sending a warning to the United States? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to follow every major turn in the Canada-US rivalry and the global defense realignment, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's much more coming.